With TextBlaze, you can create powerful dynamic snippets. However, with TextBlaze's button command, run command, and code blocks, you can build interactive interfaces that expand the capabilities of TextBlaze snippets. In this video, we'll cover how to build interactive snippets with buttons, how the button and run commands and code blocks work, some important things to know, and examples of powerful things you can do with TextBlaze snippets using these capabilities. To explain this new capability, let's start with a simple example. In this example, we'll increase a counter every time a button is clicked and increase a variable called counter by 1. First, keep in mind that code within a button command is only executed when the button is clicked. To create the example, we'll create a text field, name it counter, and set the default value to 0. Then add the button command, setting the button's label, and then adding the code that will execute when the button is clicked. To recap, the form field creates the variable called counter and sets the default value to 0. Then the button command executes the code when clicked and increases the counter by 1. And finally, this formula displays the number associated with the variable called counter. Now when you use the snippet, you can click the button and see the counter increase. TextBlaze's run command executes code exactly one time when the command is visible. If you place it in a snippet, it will run once when the snippet is triggered. Keep in mind that this is different from setting variables with TextBlaze formulas. With the run command, the value can be changed after it is set, and with formulas, it cannot be. This is because formulas are a continuous form of assignment, while the run command executes only one time. For example, instead of using a text field to set the counter, we can create a run command to define the counter variable and set its value to 0 when the snippet is triggered. However, if you place it inside an if statement, it will run exactly once whenever the clause is true. In this example, the value of the variable y depends on what you input for the variable x, and the value only updates once because the run command only executes one time. Within button and run, you can use code blocks which help you build more powerful snippets. They are a series of one or more lines of code executed at specific times, and they expand the capabilities of snippets. Within code blocks, you can add comments by writing text in front of a hashtag symbol. These are just used for information and are not evaluated within the code block. TextBlaze has text fields that you can assign names to. Variables in code blocks work in a similar way in that they have a name, but they're different in that you don't need to add a text box to add them. So within code blocks, you can assign variables in different ways, and even include TextBlaze commands. When assigning variables in a code block, you need to understand the difference between global and local variables. Global variables are the default option when you assign a variable in a code block. They make the variable available throughout the entire snippet, and they work like names for text fields. These are only available in the button and run commands. Local variables, on the other hand, are used by putting var in front of your variable and force it to only be available within the current code block. In this example, I've defined x and y, with y being a local variable, and when the code is run, x is defined, but y is not defined in the global scope because it is local. Now, here's an example that uses the run command to initialize a variable with a list. You can use the repeat command to iterate over the items initialized by the list in the run command and display them in the snippet. If you expect potential errors in your code blocks, the try and catch error statements will be useful for you. Try statements evaluate code that might contain errors. These are similar to TextBlaze's catch function in that it helps you determine what happens if an error occurs in a snippet. If statements set a condition for the code, and they help you execute logic within code blocks. And the notify function sends a notification that you can customize. If there's an error in a code block, then the code under a catch error statement will be run. And if there's no error, this code won't be run. For example, you can use this type of snippet to validate data entered in a text field. When I hit submit without entering anything, a notification appears. If I enter a value less than 500, then the notification says to check the data entered, and if it's greater than 500, it says the data is valid. You can define formulas that contain code blocks known as block functions. These start with block and end with end block. In this example, a formula is created that uses a block function. It uses a return statement that simply returns values from the function, and this allows you to use the contents of the function outside of the current formula. However, you can also create new variables in block functions, and this allows you to use local variables and keep them contained within the current function. Within block functions, you can also use a for loop statement, which helps you iterate over each item in a list one time, as well as implement more complex functions and logic. With code blocks, you can trigger remote commands with the form menu still open. For example, you can have form fields in a snippet to enter information into Datablaze, and code blocks allow you to do it with the form menu still open and before the snippet is inserted. Now you can enter the information in the form fields and insert the data into Datablaze with the button command. Text fields can include default values, but they are set manually. With code blocks, you can dynamically set the initial value of a text field with data from Datablaze. This example shows a variable called result and sets it equal to the data being read from Datablaze. Then it sets it as the initial value of the name form field. Now you can see that the initial value of the form field is based on data being pulled from Datablaze. Now, combining all the things we've talked about so far in one snippet, this example shows how you can create an interactive task management snippet that interacts with Datablaze. In this snippet, data is being read from Datablaze. The repeat command displays the tasks that are in progress. A button allows you to update the individual tasks, and you can fill out information for new tasks and click a button to insert them into Datablaze. Now when you use the snippet, you can click the button and see that the tasks are updated and marked as complete in Datablaze. And when you enter information and click the button, the new task is inserted into Datablaze. Check the description for the link to this example and the others shown in this video, and as always, feel free to post in our community for help.